$1. Is that a joke to you, or do you just not have any more? The auctioneer's voice cracked across the ballroom like a whip. He snatched the folded quilt out of the stranger's hands and flung it into the dust beside the podium. The man in the work boots didn't flinch. He knelt, picked the quilt back up, folded it once, and said, $1 is what I have to give today. The room went quiet. 300 people who had been laughing a moment ago suddenly couldn't look anywhere but the floor. Nobody in that ballroom knew who he really was. Nobody knew that before the night was over, the man throwing insults would lose everything he was standing on. What would you do if the person being humiliated in front of you turned out to be the only one who could save the place you loved? Let's go back to the beginning. 4 hours before that quilt hit the floor, the old Kestrel Hall had stood on Main Street for 110 years, and it was dying. Water stains crawled up the plaster. The roof leaked over the stage. Pigeons had gotten into the rafters 2 winters back, and nobody had bothered to chase them out. For 6 months, a quiet carpenter named Elijah Marsh had shown up every weekend, unpaid, patching what he could with his own hands and his own lumber. He didn't talk much. He measured twice, cut once, and went home before anyone thought to thank him. Around his neck, under his flannel shirt, he wore a small brass key on a leather cord, the key to his grandmother's sewing room, the room where she'd taught him that care was a kind of prayer, and that a job done quietly was still a job done right. Bradley Whitfield chaired the Save Kestrel Hall Committee, and he chaired it the way he chaired everything, loudly and from the front. His family's name was on 3 buildings downtown, cast in bronze plaques he liked to walk past slowly. Nobody on the board ever corrected him, because correcting Bradley Whitfield had a way of costing you your seat, and everyone at that hall knew someone whose seat had already been cost. Tonight was the committee's biggest fundraiser of the year, a charity auction to cover the roof repairs, and Bradley intended to be the hero of it, gavel in hand, smiling for the photographer his mother had hired. He'd already picked out the quote he wanted printed under his photo in the paper. The final item on the block was a hand-stitched quilt, donated anonymously, patched together from 50 years of fabric scraps. Nobody in the room recognized it. Elijah did. It had been his grandmother's. The bidding opened at $200 and climbed fast among the wineglass crowd, the way money moves when it's spending itself for a photo op. Then it stalled at $340. In the pause, Elijah, still in his work clothes, sawdust on his boots, the only man in the room who'd actually touched the building's bones, raised one hand and said, quietly, $1. A ripple of laughter went through the tables. Somebody near the bar said, loud enough to carry, "Is he serious?" Bradley leaned into the microphone, delighted, the way a man leans in when he thinks the room is finally his. $1, he repeated, drawing it out, tasting it. Is that a joke to you, or do you just not have any more? He snatched the quilt off the podium and threw it to the floor like it was trash somebody had left behind. A woman near the front gasped and then went still, the way a whole room goes still when it realizes it's watching something it will regret not stopping. Elijah didn't raise his voice. He walked forward, knelt, picked the quilt up, dusted it off with 2 slow passes of his hand, and said, $1 is what I have to give today. But it's the only thing in this room I already own. Bradley laughed again, but it came out thinner this time, the kind of laugh that's checking to see if anyone's still laughing with it. He leaned in one more time. Some people, he said, scanning the room for approval, don't belong at a table like this. Nobody laughed with him. Somewhere in the back, a chair scraped, but no one stood up. Not yet. What Bradley didn't know was that the quilt wasn't the only thing in that building Elijah already owned. His grandmother had made that quilt at her kitchen table 40 years earlier, the same table where she taught him the only rule she ever gave him twice. You finish what you start, and you never let anyone see you afraid to. She'd cleaned Kestrel Hall for 30 years before the town ever hired a real maintenance crew, scrubbing floors nobody thanked her for, and mending curtains nobody noticed were torn. She never once got her name on a plaque. Elijah had grown up believing that building owed his family nothing. He'd bought it anyway. Not out of sentiment, out of quiet, patient math. He'd spent 11 months buying up the debt on Kestrel Hall through a small holding company with his grandmother's maiden name on the paperwork, working nights after his real job, telling no one. Not even the committee he was quietly repairing their roof for free. That morning, before the auction even opened its doors, the final payment had cleared. The deed was already his. The side door opened, and a woman in a gray suit walked straight to the podium, papers in hand. "Mr. Whitfield," she said, loud enough for every table to hear, "I need to introduce you to the new owner of this building." He's standing right there. Every head turned to the man in the work boots holding a torn quilt. Bradley's smile didn't move, but his face did, the color draining out of it in real time, like someone had pulled a plug. His hand found the podium edge and gripped it. The same crowd that had laughed at $1 10 minutes earlier now watched the auctioneer discover, in front of all of them, exactly who he'd been mocking. The video someone's phone caught that night hit 4 million views by the following week. Reporters called it the auction that stopped mid-sentence. The comment sections filled with strangers asking the same question the room had been too slow to ask out loud. How many times had Bradley done this before? To someone who didn't own the building. The Save Kestrel Hall committee removed Bradley Whitfield within 72 hours. 3 other board members resigned rather than answer questions about how long they'd known what he was like, and said nothing anyway. Elijah didn't sue anyone. He didn't have to. 2 local businesses that had quietly backed Bradley's committee for years pulled their sponsorships within the week, publicly, in statements that used the word unacceptable more than once. The town council passed a new rule the very next month. No auction chair could serve without a public vote, and no committee could meet without at least one member who didn't already have a plaque with their name on it. The quilt itself sold, in the end, for $41,000 at a re-auction Elijah insisted on holding fairly. Every cent of it donated straight back into the very roof it had been thrown onto the floor beside. 3 years later, Kestrel Hall reopened with a new name on the cornerstone, the Marsh Family Trades Hall, a free carpentry and sewing program for kids who'd never been handed a hammer or a needle and told they were good enough to keep it. Elijah still shows up on weekends. He still doesn't talk much. He still wears the brass key under his shirt. If this story moved you, hit like, share it with someone who needs the reminder, and subscribe for more. But tell me honestly in the comments, have you ever watched someone get humiliated and said nothing? Here's what really gets me about this one. It's not that Bradley was cruel, it's that an entire room of people needed a reveal to remember that kindness was owed before they ever knew Elijah's name. What would it take for you to have stood up before the reveal?